Okay, well, we'll go ahead and get started today. First off, thank you all very much for coming. I know it's lunchtime, so you're either hungry or you're full, but either way, I appreciate your attendance. So I hope everybody's having a good, fun ProMat show. I know we're enjoying it. I myself am very excited for Magic Johnson speaking tomorrow night. How cool is that going to be, right? He's going to give us some tips on knowing your customer. But I think for me, it's really cool to be able to go to my friends and say, I got an assist from Magic Johnson. Right. They said open with a joke, but clearly just not a terrible one. Anyways, so with me today is Eric Cameron from Louisville, Kentucky, and Lauren Noyes from Los Angeles, California. Together, they have a combined 20 years experience in the logisting and warehousing industry, specifically with regards to software and warehouse execution systems. And I'm Brian Reinhart from Dallas, Texas. So with introductions out of the way, let's talk about the WES. So the old adage used to be better, faster, cheaper, right? You know, and pick two. It can either be better and faster or faster and cheaper or better and cheaper but not fast. Well, that's not really the case anymore. As markets have diversified and gotten more crowded, as consumers have gotten smarter about their purchasing decisions, companies have had to look inward to find a new competitive advantage. What used to be a pleasant surprise to customers, next day or same day delivery, is no longer a surprise, but rather a baseline requirement. This shift in expectations for consumers has led to a shift in how distribution centers, logistics centers, and order fulfillment operations have changed. Enter the warehouse execution system. So first, we're going to take a look back at how things used to be done, and then we'll kind of dive into where we're headed next. So traditionally, your order fulfillment center would operate with two separate software platforms that communicated with each other. You would have the warehouse management system, which was responsible for high-level functions within the warehouse. Things like inventory control, inventory management, labor control, waiving, order release, order allocation, shipping, transportation. Those were your WMS functions. We do have a couple seats up here in the front row if there's no seats, so I don't bite, promise. But anyway, so the WMS was very high level. And then your warehouse control system was controlling your automation, conveyor routing, sortation, merges, your order fulfillment technologies, pick to voice, pick to light, RF, ASRS is goods demand. And those two platforms relied on a robust interface to communicate back and forth. So the WMS would give a command, the WCS would receive it, execute it, send it back to the WMS. Well, that's not the way we do things anymore. Nowadays, it's all in one platform called the Warehouse Execution System, which we'll refer to throughout the presentation as the WES. The WES combines all the functionality I just mentioned into one holistic, inclusive software platform. So with that modern WES software architecture, there's no longer this interface layer and communication layer between the two software platforms. The WES has the ability to understand what's going on in the warehouse and make real-time adjustments on the fly. So let's think of a scenario where in a traditional warehouse, you have to fulfill an order from a pick module, and you route your container to location ABC to pick SKU XYZ. Only that lane is full and there's a traffic jam on the conveyor, or the inventory was off, or the operator's on a break, and that order can't be fulfilled. Well, in the past, the WCS would say to the WMS, hey, we can't fulfill it. What do we do? And let's either wait, maybe route it to QC or a jackpot area, and we'll fulfill it later. Well, immediately your same-day shipping has gone out the window, and you'll be lucky to get it out the next day. What the warehouse execution system has the capability to do is recognize that this lane is full or this inventory is missing and make on-the-fly real-time adjustments to route that container to another location that may have that inventory to get your order fulfilled and get it out the door. To use a metaphor, it's like when you would go on the family vacation, right, back in maybe the 80s or the 90s, and you had the big paper map that folded out in the van, which, how dangerous was that, by the way? And, you know, it would say, take I-65 south to get to the beach. And if there's a traffic jam, you sat in traffic, and you hope it wasn't that long. But nowadays, you have Google Maps. So it would say, hey, there's a traffic jam on 65. Let's take this exit and divert it. The warehouse execution system is the Google Maps of modern distribution and order fulfillment. It provides system management, visibility, reporting, troubleshooting, all from one centralized location. You no longer have to train operators on 2 different systems and 2 different platforms, but you can do it all from one place. And there's also economies of scale with centralizing and combining your warehouse operation. So obviously, anytime you take 2 systems from 2 different providers with 2 different sets of licenses and combine them into one, there's going to be cost savings there. But there's also a lot of other cost savings throughout the life of a warehouse execution system implementation. So all of your project management, your installation, your go-live support, your post-go-live support, that's all done with one provider, one platform. So clearly I'm a guy who likes to use metaphors. Let's talk about another one here. Think about remodeling a bathroom. You have your electricians, your plumbers, your tile guy, and you have to have the good tile guy because if the tile's not perfect, the bathroom won't look good, Brian. May have been quoting my wife. But what happens is the electrician can't rewire the bathroom until the wall comes down. And the wall can't come down until the plumber has turned off the water. And he can't turn off the water today because you got to take a shower. And it ends up being an organizational nightmare. That's why general contractors were invented, or jack of all trades. The warehouse execution system is now your jack of all trades. You don't have the WMS pointing at the WCS and saying, it didn't route this order correctly, and the WCS saying, well, they didn't drop this order correctly. It's all in one place. It's one easy fix. And so now that we kind of all understand what the WES is, why it makes sense, how it combines the best-in-breed applications from the WMS and the WCS, let's talk about some of the applications and industries that it's best suited for. So e-commerce, your business to consumer, orders is obviously growing. It's a segment that any business needs to be involved in if you want to continue to grow. Retail, that's been a mainstay of order fulfillment and warehouse operations for years, but we are seeing a shift in that environment, so we're going to talk about that. And then lastly, we're going to talk about the omni-channel distribution, which combines your retail and e-commerce into one centralized distribution center for order fulfillment. So first, to talk about e-commerce, if we haven't realized it yet, it's here to stay. The U.S. alone did over $400 billion in e-commerce sales last year. It's projected to rise to $700 billion by 2020. So you need to have an e-commerce platform, and you need to have a distribution center capable of supporting that platform. What does that mean? It means seasonal rate spikes that could be 5 to 10, upwards of sometimes 20 times your regular rates. It means high inventory turnover. It means a large number of SKUs. These are all new things to the warehousing industry that you have to be able to account for. And it's not just enough to add more shelving to contain more SKUs. You need a software system with the intelligence and flexibility to adjust to those real-time changes in the marketplace. And then within the retail, I mentioned that environment has changed a little bit. No longer are the days of really large back rooms. If you can remember 15, 20 years ago, you would, you go into Walmart and you're looking for a DVD or a book and it's not on the shelf. So you ask the clerk, hey, can we go to the back and find that for me? And there was always this magical back room where every product was available and they bring it out to you. Not the case anymore. Retailers are using all of their space for product presentation, direct sales, and there's no longer a large storage room at the back of these outlets. What does it mean for distribution? It means that you're not going to be fulfilling your retail center 1, 2, 3 times a week, but rather those orders are increasing. We're now seeing almost daily shipments to retail outlets from the local distribution centers. So if you're relying on an outdated software platform to fulfill those orders and make those deliveries, you may encounter issues. And then lastly, the omni-channel fulfillment area. So when I say omni-channel from a distribution perspective, what it means is using the same distribution center, the same order fulfillment mechanisms to fulfill both retail and e-commerce orders. And so what does that mean? Everything we just talked about gets magnified because now you have the seasonal spikes that you see with e-com, you have the large SKU profile that you see with e-com, but you also have the larger orders and the larger quantity orders that you see with retail. So you need a software system that is flexible enough to handle this ever-changing environment and pull both of these types of order fulfillment from the same location or the same distribution center. Businesses are really taking an omni-channel approach with their consumers nowadays. Holistically speaking, omni-channel is kind of a methodology whereby consumers have their businesses at a consistent, close reach. So it's done via web marketing, traditional marketing. You can go to the store and buy something. You can order on your phone, your iPad, your computer. All of these avenues of approach to the customers are great, and it does increase sales. But if you don't have the back-end order fulfillment technologies and strategies behind, you're going to find yourself late on deliveries and not meeting the same-day requirements that your customers want. But now that we understand, the WES, where it fits a little, I'm going to turn it over to Lauren, and she's going to talk about some of the specific functions that you should look for in a modern warehouse execution system.
Okay. Thanks, Brian. Okay. Warehouse execution system. Execution is the key word there, right? It's the new fancy term. You have to be able to execute in the same day. And the only way you're going to be able to do that are with critical functions from the WMS and WCS. So WMS critical function, you need to have inventory management, right? If you don't know what's in the warehouse, how are you supposed to go pick it? You need to be able to release your orders in a particular manner. So by looking at all of the labor and how you have it allocated in different areas of the warehouse, you need to release certain orders with those order attributes that need to go to the particular areas, maybe an automation area, a more manual area, a value add area, and then you have to be able to manage your labor. So looking at how much work needs to be done in a pick module and changing how many people you have in that area throughout the day is going to help you utilize those people so that they're not just sitting idle, right? You don't want to have a carton go into a zone with no picks. So the WES really allows you to optimize all of the automation that you may or may not have right now. So automation is goods to man. It's also RF picking, pick to light, pick to voice, anything that is controlled by software. And by having visibility to the inventory and then seeing the traffic on the floor, you have the real-time feedback and the ability to make decisions immediately, as opposed to having a WCS send a message and have it take 30 seconds to get the WM and then, miss the divert that it needed to go to. So the idea of looking at your order profile in a WES is to reduce the cycle time. You want to be able to get that order out in the same day. And the way that you reduce the cycle time is reducing the amount a person has to walk. So you want to keep everything consolidated, right? And you also don't want to go to that location often. So if you can, essentially batch pick or grab a bunch of items into a single container in one go, you're reducing the amount of walking for an operator and the time the location is picked. So up right here, let's see if I can get the laser. You see all those totes right there with all the same stuff? So the idea is that you're picking all of the product into one tote, and those are all single line, single piece orders. So has anyone here ever had conveyor backup? Photo eyes are all blocked because you have multiple containers with single items in there? Yeah, okay, thank you. Got one guy. Well, the idea is that you can reduce tote traffic up to at least 50%, right, by putting them all together, because it doesn't matter where that product goes once you pack it out. You take it to the auto bagger right here, and you're able to get 500 orders out in an hour, because all you have to do at that point is you scan the container, you know what's in there, and then you're just dropping the same product and you're filling that order. And then the idea is similar down below. You've got multi-line orders, but they're all the same, so you might as well pick all the product at the same time and then bag them right there. Okay, this is very, very important. And I say it with conviction because I've seen a lot of WMS systems that do not mirror SKUs. And when you have a WES, the whole idea, right, is that you have system visibility. You're able to change things on the fly. Everything's dynamic. Well, if you don't have a product in multiple locations and you're not able to route to those locations, what's the point of even having all the software or the fancy system, right? So you have to have multiple products in multiple zones, because if a zone backs up, you want to be able to route it, because somebody, in that zone is just overwhelmed. They're picking a lot of orders are coming in, and by diverting it to another zone, you know that you're still going to be able to get the order out in the same day. Right here, it's a pick-to-light horseshoe-shaped cell setup, so they're picking the majority of the SKUs above the conveyor into the totes, and they have 8 of these cells all mirrored the same 100 SKUs. So they can complete the order, and then it gets out, within a half hour. This is another key point to take away. Simultaneous replenishment. You don't want to replen on a second shift. You want to be able to replenish at the same time that you're picking. And that happens because you'll get an emergency replenishment, something is out of stock, something got short picked, and you want the ability to keep the order going. It needs to travel through the system, but it needs to go back to that location, and by the time it travels back there, that product has been replenished. So you don't want an order ending up in QC purgatory and then it sits there for a few days because somebody forgot about it.
Yeah, the labor reduction capacity that you hit on, I think it's something I just want to reiterate. There's been operations out there that have completely eliminated off-shift replenishment due to a simultaneous pick and replen operation. So it's a key function that has immediate savings just for one simple operation.
And with e-commerce, it's becoming more difficult to figure out what your min and max levels need to be in a particular bin location, because they might have a promotion online and the warehouse never gets told, right, that some item is 50% off. So being able to replenish that location, allows it to get out in the same day. So all of these functions are useless if you can't have real-time feedback and view what's going on in the system, right? If the system goes down, system's down. So being able to have a WES that is sending you proactive alerts too, right, of what is going on is very important. So if you have a scanner that is maybe only scanning at 85%, you're able to get an alert. You should be able to get an alert, and then you can go out on the floor and say, okay, scanner 3 needs to get adjusted, or maybe, photo I got knocked, we need to fix this particular area, so that you get it before it's completely down, right? And it's only reading at 0% and everything's getting routed to, again, that lovely QC area. So email, text message, that might be too personal, but at least getting email alerts to your phone or a phone call from the system is very important so that you can keep everything moving and get it out in the same day. So I'm going to hand it over to Eric now.
Okay, thanks, Lauren. So far today we've talked about a lot of the different technologies and techniques that the warehouse execution system can help you or your customers achieve same-day fulfillment. But the reality is the environment that we all work in, whether you're in distribution, supply chain, whatever you want to call it, it is very, very dynamic. Everybody in this room has probably been challenged by their superiors to say, hey, we need you to be able to hit 20,000 orders in a day and get them out same-day order fulfillment. You spend a lot of time and energy in order to do that. Come in the room, give you the pat on the back, good job, mission accomplished, well done. And then 2 weeks later, they come back in your office and they say, well, change of plans. Now we're decided because you've done so well, we're going to close down this distribution center and you're going to get their volume. So now instead of 20,000 orders, you need to do 40. Or to keep a competitive advantage from a shipping perspective, we need to move the cutoff time for orders from 2 o'clock to 6 o'clock. So your window of shipping is going to change. We know it's dynamic, we know it's ever changing. So really it's incumbent upon the WES to be forward thinking and to be understanding and looking into what are the new technologies that they can bring to the table to allow you to meet these demands in the future. And so we're going to talk about some of these future things. First thing I want to talk about is augmented reality picking. This technology is blending virtual reality with the real world, where through the use of these devices, we're actually able to give, or the WES is actually able to give, through heads-up display, visual cues to the operator, much like you would see in a pick-to-light environment, telling them where to go, what activities to do, and so on. In addition to that, they're giving auditory prompts by speaking to the operator through a headset, where to go, what to do, giving them the tasks, giving them updates on how they're doing from a productivity perspective. and then the operator can actually respond back to the device through auditory prompts. So the same voice recognition technology that some of the voice providers use here that you can see at the show this week are within augmented reality picking. So the next technology that we would use is these systems have cameras in them. They use cameras to figure out where they are and to map 3D space. Well, we can use those cameras in order to capture things like serial numbers, capture things like lot codes, and even a quality disposition through pictures of the product. So there are a lot of capabilities that we can use for augmented reality, and these are things that a warehouse execution should be looking for in the future, because it is coming. It will replace pick-to-light, it will replace pick-to-voice, and there's a lot of applications for this type of technology. So as we move past things that the warehouse execution can do to make an operator more effective, we start thinking about ways that we can almost do our best to remove as much operator interaction from the application as possible and from your operations. So obviously at the show this week, we're seeing a lot of different technologies, advanced vision systems, where vision systems can actually look at a shelf or a bin of inventory and can pick out individual units to select from. So pairing these with advanced robotics, where we're actually with multiple end effectors that can pick with pneumatic, pick with suction, allows us to basically replace humans and even pair them with technologies such as goods to man, where we're replacing the operator completely, and you have the robotic arms doing the picking and the placement into the outbound orders, or even doing the stocking process. So you will see that at the show today. You can walk around. I've seen, I've been working the booth, but I've seen about 5 or 6 different providers that are showing this capability. And it is, everybody here, all these providers are doing pilots right now to where they are replacing operators with this type of technology. So it is something that a warehouse execution system has to be able to leverage and has to be able to control. So as we move forward, we know that the warehouse execution and distribution centers are a long way from removing people. We're not going to get to a lights out situation, and people are our most valuable resource. So what can the warehouse execution do to leverage the people even better than they do today? Well, the first thing is to gather information from some wearables that we could outfit the operators with on the warehouse floor. So your Fitbits, your watches, things like that. With those type of technologies, we can gather information like how much distance they've traveled throughout the day, what activities they've been doing, where they are in the warehouse right now, what equipment they're working with, and even give information such as what their blood pressure is, what their heart rate is, so we know how hard they're working. And so if the warehouse execution system can gather this information, it affords it the opportunity to make some pretty interesting decisions from it. So imagine a scenario where you've got a cutoff time by 6 o'clock and you get an order that comes in at 5:55. The warehouse execution can figure out, well, I want to pick it from this location in the warehouse. Which operator should I direct this task to? Who is the closest with the correct equipment in order to minimize that cycle time to hit that cutoff? Another example would be, let's say you're doing a palletization process. If anybody does palletization or the operators, it's very, very strenuous work. So the warehouse execution system can actually direct work to maybe operators that have done the least amount of work that particular day in order to balance the work across all the operators. And what that can do is actually minimize the amount of workplace injuries by not directing more work always to the same operator just because they're fast, and make that person more fatigued and more apt to have injuries at the workplace. So this is, again, information that a warehouse execution system can use by leveraging our most important resources. So the next logical step, if the warehouse execution system is able to leverage what we're seeing, sorry, it looks like we're missing some of the imagery here, but if we are able to leverage the information coming from people within the 4 walls of the distribution center, then why not extend that past the 4 walls? Why not extend that to outside the distribution center? And now we get into the Internet of Things. And this is something that's been talked about really for the past, I'd say 3 to 4 ProMats. There's probably 3 sessions. I think there's even a keynote this week about the transformative process of the Internet of Things. And it is quite powerful. So the concept here is that we outfit products, we outfit packaging, we outfit totes, we outfit pallets, all these different things, trucks, with devices and sensors that have the ability to connect to each other and share information. So just like we talked about on the wearable side, if we can collect information through the Internet of Things from pallets and from packaging, these sensors, it allows the WES to make a lot of different decisions that they don't have access to today. So an example would be pharmaceutical industry. If you do a lot of business with the pharmaceutical, there's a lot of temperature controlled products. So you got to be very careful that a product is within a freezer or cooler environment, because if it gets to a certain temperature, it will spoil and it can't be used anymore. And that could be hundreds of thousands of dollars in scrap product. So we can actually implant temperature sensors in the pallet so we can tell the temperature of that product and make decisions on what to do with it. Oh, it's already spoiled, we can't send it out because if we do, it'll be a recall. Or we can see that a product coming in, because of accelerometers on the pallet, it's been damaged. The package has been damaged. We know that it's damaged. So the warehouse execution system can actually take that information that's not within the four walls and decide, well, I'm not going to have this product to distribute now. I either need to sequence new orders now for release to make sure we maintain balance and productivity within the system, or potentially even off-shift some of this production to other facilities in real time to meet the SLAs and your agreements to your customers. So again, it's leveraging all this information that we're getting through the Internet of Things within the warehouse execution system.
Yeah, don't be scared by this slide. That's not the little girl from the ring. Nothing will happen to you in the next 7 days, I promise.
So
it's terrifying.
It's Cortana.
It's so scary.
So now if we're in a position in the future where the warehouse execution system is getting data from all of these different points, packages, from sensors on materials, from operators, now we're getting billions and billions of data points, and it's just growing exponentially. Today's data mining and the ability to analyze this data by information systems is going to be inaccurate. It does no good if it takes a system hours upon hours to take in all of these data points and not be able to make real-time determinations with it. That's the power of the WES, is to be able to realize what's going on quickly and to make changes and to alter the production based upon that. So these systems are going to become inadequate, and the warehouse execution system is going to be really pressured to be able to use a lot of this data. So what do we need to do? We need to look at real-time interaction, artificial intelligence, and especially machine learning. So you could see a scenario where operators and management can actually sit down with the warehouse execution system in the future, provide it production data, and teach it and train it how it should operate based upon different inputs, based upon production data on different days throughout the year. Teach it how it's supposed to place operators. Teach it the most effective way to release work to the floor in order to maintain balance. And then we get to the point where once it has been taught and once it's learned, it can begin to make some of these determinations itself and truly maximize, take the decision making that it has today to the next level where it's running a lot of the operation by itself. Now, we're not trying to get into Skynet or anything like that. We're not trying to have an information, the WES take over the world. But again, if we can take a lot of this decision making, because you got all these data points that's feeding information, quite frankly, it's too much for a person sitting in front of a computer all day to look at. So you want to leverage the warehouse execution system to do that. And in the future, we will be there. So a lot of these topics we talked about are pretty far out. Again, I don't think we're talking about Skynet running your distribution center in the next probably 5 to 10 years. But some of the technologies are here, and they are going to be utilized here actually very quickly. And again, you're going to see some of these technologies here today. The outfitting of autonomous vehicles, whether it be AGVs, self-guided fork trucks with robotics, is happening. And so the next step to that is to allow the WES to fully integrate that more so it can leverage the technology even more completely. In addition to that, the predictive analytics, some of the data mining that we're talking about, The WES is already doing some of that today. So it is looking at the buying patterns of your customers. It's looking at that and understanding that seasonally, where should I stock my product within the warehouse in order to minimize travel time and minimize cycle time. If I order object A, the customer is always ordering object B together. So let's slot them together. And so the WES is actually doing some of that data mining today in order to help you with slotting and overall reduction of cycle time. So I think at this point we're going to walk through some case studies and talk about how customers today are using warehouse execution technologies, different types of automation, and how they're leveraging that.
Okay, so in this particular system, you're looking at e-commerce fulfillment. For this system right here, most of the orders are 6 to 7 lines, 1.5 units per line, typical e-commerce, and they have the ability to ship out 4,200 orders an hour. So they have 2 types of picking systems. They do a carton release, and they have a pick module, which handles a good portion of the lines for some of those core SKUs, right? Items that are more of a hassle to slot because it's in carton flow. And then they have a goods demand system that gets the remaining picks for items that might not be as popular over here. So going back to some of the functions, right? If you release a carton and a zone is full in the pick mod, it can bypass it and go to the goods to man area to get that pick if necessary, because you do want to mirror SKUs in both systems. So, if one happens to be down or full, you've got options. And for them, originally their WM, wanted to have inventory control in the goods demand system, but we took it over because if an order goes to the first aisle and product is not there, we have to route it on the fly. So immediately it gets there and it's like, oh, I don't want to go to QC once I'm at the conveyor, I need to go down. So being able to go and make intelligent decisions immediately is very important. And that's what you have to look at when you're designing a system, is redundancy so that you can be efficient.
Yeah, I think what's important about systems like this is when you're talking about a larger system, when you have multiple technologies, you've got 50 operators within this pick module. You've got 20 operators that are picking with some goods to person technology, and then you maybe have offline voice or RF processing. The key to making sure a system like this can fulfill orders quickly enough to hit same-day fulfillment is keeping balance within a system like this. Is to making sure that you're sequencing work to where even if you have a run on a product, especially in e-commerce, that you space that work out so you're not completely bottlenecking the system in one area and that you're maintaining that flow. It does you no good if you have one pick zone that's hitting 600-700 lines per hour, if that's starving every other area of the warehouse and stops them from hitting what their goal is. So the idea is that the intelligent carton release, the intelligent routing, the on-the-fly reassignment of inventory to different technologies in different locations is critical to make sure that a system like this can meet the daily throughput.
And these orders, they are dropped and they can get out in 15 to 20 minutes. So when we're saying on the fly, that extra 30 seconds of a WCS talking to a WM affects the timing of a system when you've got 5 miles of conveyor.
The next system we're going to talk about is a traditional omni-channel distribution facility for retail and apparel. So what they're doing here is they have employed a warehouse execution system that has full inventory control within a goods to man technology. Now they've decided in this particular implementation to utilize the majority of the distribution and storage is actually handled within goods to man with some off-site storage. But on the warehouse execution system side, the challenge here is that this system has to be designed to not only hit the daily brick and mortar replenishments that Brian talked about today, where you're doing maybe 1 or 2 replenishments or sometimes 3 and 4 a week to a store based upon demand, but also hitting within the same operation that shift and that jump that can happen in e-commerce. For this particular customer, their daily average may only be 4,000 or 5,000 orders on the e-commerce side a day, but on Black Friday or heading up to Black Friday or on a sale that they may have, that jumps to 50,000 orders. So the system has to be very flexible and dynamic, not only from a labor standpoint, but from an operation standpoint, to make sure that we can balance both of those things and meet the overall daily demand. So here the warehouse execution system is actually starting at the receiving process. You can't see it, it's up at the front of this here, but basically it's an automated receiving where, because this customer has the luxury of getting products in the door with ASNs on each box, we can do an automated receiving process, allocate that inventory either to the goods demand technology or to secondary storage, and then route balancing the work to operators to store the product within the technology. Again, looking in real time with what's going on at the operators. If one operator is working slow, then we route it to another operator in order to push as much through the system as possible. From there, once the inventory is in the system, we get to the goods demand technology where we start with an intelligent order release, and then we have the capability of staffing anywhere from 5 operators upwards to 30 operators from a picking standpoint within the technology here, where the operators can pick both e-com orders and retail orders at the same time. Now, to really hit those 20x bumps in terms of demand, what was important here is to identify and to use some of the technologies and techniques that Lauren talked about earlier today. The grouping of multiple orders into a tote for single line item orders. Grouping of multiple small line item orders into like 6 cells of a tote. This system would bog down completely if we had 50,000 little boxes rolling around on it. It would not hit it. But if we can shift that down to 2,000 totes that all have 50, 60 orders in them, then it makes a significant difference. And then from here, it's your pretty standard stuff where we're routing to value-added services within the warehouse execution system, automated manifest, and then down here is really some of the scalable opportunities here is we're using that auto bagger that you saw today. And for them, that is a key function because without that, they would never hit their e-commerce peaks. Because they can hit 500-600 orders an hour just in these 2 stations with the ability to expand that out in the future, it's become a pretty powerful solution for them.
In this particular rendering, we have e-commerce, dropship, and retail orders. And for this customer right there, majority of their items are custom and they're assembled. So the order will drop and then they have to be able to balance the system and make sure you have enough people in the assembly area to be able to get it out in the same day, because not everything can be pre-kitted and put away in a pick location. So order is dropped and the WES is looking at how many orders are currently on the line, so how many cartons are in the system, how many cartons are in VAS, so that it can release orders with particular attributes, right? If I've got my VAS full and it's backed up on the spiral, I don't need to go release more of those orders in the system. I want to release maybe a few drop ships or retail to balance it all out and flesh out the areas that are busy. So the order goes to a goods demand area. It gets picked. Anything that was oversized or fast moving gets picked with pick to voice in another area and consolidated and then taken to the VAS in a pick to light consolidation area. So the idea here is if you have like value added areas, assembly areas, be cognizant of how much labor you have to have, and you don't particularly know, right? Order drops and that's going to fluctuate the most. So being able to change how much labor you have in that area and go, put them on cycle counting in the meantime is very important so that you can get everything out the same day.
Okay. So as we kind of wind down, and again, we appreciate everybody's attendance today. Hopefully you guys got something out of this, but we wanted to talk about some of the things that you guys maybe should consider as you're deciding on whether a warehouse execution system, number one, is even right for you, and number two, if a WES is right for you, then maybe what you should be considering when you're trying to decide on who your partner may be. Because there's a lot of good partners that are at the show here this week, and everybody brings something different to the table. From our perspective, one of the first questions you should ask yourself is, what WMS functions do I need within the warehouse execution system? There may be specialty functions that a warehouse execution system does not have. Most warehouse execution systems don't do vendor management, they don't do fleet management, they don't do yard management, those types of things. So if you need those functions, then you may need to still have a traditional warehouse management system integrated into your system. But if you don't need those functions, if you need your typical primary, secondary storage, your typical replenishments, your shipping, a lot of those can happen within a warehouse execution system. And again, as Brian talked about earlier today, you may not need a warehouse management system at all. So it's just something to consider as you're looking forward and trying to decide what's right for your business. Number two, modular architecture and flexible architecture. Your business is going to change. It changes every day. There's new challenges every year. And you cannot have a system, whether it be an automation system or an information system controlling it, that is too static and too rigid to not change with those times. So be on the lookout for that. Ask the right questions about, well, what happens if I need to integrate a new technology? Or what happens if my order profile changes and instead of 1 line per order, that jumps to 4 lines per order? What will your software do to help me? What will your system do to help me? Ask those probing questions. Next, hardware agnostic. We think it's important that you're not tied within the warehouse execution system to one type of technology. Look for a partner, and again, there's many of them here, that can provide you a variety of technology so you truly can have a best-of-breed technology, or a best-of-breed system, excuse me. Everybody's got their specialties, but make sure that they've got a lot to offer. Otherwise, they're going to try to sell you a hammer because they sell nails. That's the way things work. So ask the right questions, make sure that it's flexible. And then finally, from a future technologies perspective, look for a vendor and a partner that's forward-thinking. Once you get involved in one of these types of systems, the cost to change within your business is significant. You can't just switch from year to year. So once you pick one and you start that implementation process, you got to think that you're going to be with that partner for 5, 8, 10 years. So pick a partner that's going to be looking at that future technology and is doing that R&D. So 5 years from now, they're going to have that next greatest thing for you to use in your operation. So again, thank you all for your attendance. We appreciate it on behalf of Brian and Lauren and myself. Thank you for your time. We hope you're enjoying the show. Feel free to contact us if you have questions. We'll be at the back of the room. And I think this presentation is actually going to be on the ProMat website in 30 days. You can download it and come see us at the booth if you have any other questions also. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.